Good evening. I'm very happy to be here, and as Carlos said, I'm a product of Arab-German unity. This product seems to work well, but it hasn't been very easy to get to that product. From my German mother, I learned a lot of principles that have governed my life all along. Most importantly, Gerechtigkeit, Injusticia. All my life has been about justice. Perfectionism, we cannot do anything half-heartedly. Nothing comes for free. There's no self-entitlement. You have to work and earn your way through. She also said that we have to be kind to people, and we always have to feel with the people that are less privileged. From my dad, I've learned the passion for life. I've learned lots of languages, generosity, modesty, humility. So it's quite an explosive character I have. But as Carlos said, I think the best thing that ever happened to me was growing up in a family that really believed in gender equality. And often, gender equality meant I had enough confidence to move on in life and work as a journalist in a very difficult region, in a male-dominated hierarchical society, in an autocratic society, in a society where women really are victims of their own doings, but are also victims of society. In my country, for example, women are 50% of university students, but when it comes to the labor force, they are 13% of the actual labor force. It's very, very, very unfair, and it really tells a lot about the potential development of our region. If you look at the larger Middle East, I think 13 out of 15 countries rank the lowest in terms of gender equality. So for me, being a woman in that patriarchal society, always being looked at as the daughter of the foreigner, which means a lot, it can mean a lot. Also, not fitting the typical stereotype has been good and bad in many ways, but it's allowed me to move on. I never wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a simultaneous translator, but I couldn't go to America to study because my grandfather said, in our family, girls cannot go to America. You can go to Lebanon. I went to Lebanon at the height of the Civil War, and I nearly was going to be killed 4 times as a student, but I moved on. Then I decided to study journalism, and I went and I did a stint at the Jordan Times, which was back then a very multicultural newspaper. And I remember in my life, I've always had amazing role models, and in that paper, my boss was my first role model, and I remember the first story I gave him, and of course we had to use the typewriters, we didn't have computers. He just took the paper. This is a story, come back. Young girl, come back, get us a better story. I started to cry, he really crushed me, but in that process, he trained me on how to think straight and how to really prioritize what needs to go into that piece of news. Then I had a second Indian who took me by the hand. He was the front page editor. And he basically told me, I will help you, but you cannot repeat the mistakes that I will fix for you. But imagine what it took to fix a newspaper article then. We had to cut with the scissors and paste with the Scotch tape. And in between, we had the magic marker. It's not like today when you just cut and paste, and you also have artificial intelligence. Working back then in 1984 meant if I needed anything from the archive, I had to go in and dig. Back then, in my newspaper, there was only one woman other than me doing reporting. It was really amazing. I was very shy, but as I said, my mother always encouraged me to think of myself equal to men. Later on, I went to work at the Reuters news agency in Amman. Again, it was at the beginning of a new change in the political situation, and I remembered uncovering the first ever riots in Jordan, 3rd day on my job, and my bosses were really skeptical. Then, after that, martial law disappeared, so it was a new era of political development, and I trailed along. Reuters was like the biggest school of journalism that I could ever go to, and I'm thankful for everything that I've learned there at this amazing, amazing institution. Most importantly, it's allowed me to cover so many events that have outlined the Middle East. The first and the second Gulf War, the civil war in Lebanon, the war in Iraq, the Jordanian-Israeli peace treaty, the radicalization of our society, the Islamization of our society. I've seen a lot in these 36 years. Moving on, I've lived in many Arab capitals, but I had to go back to Jordan to get married to a businessman who didn't really want me to be working as a journalist, and I was very tired back then. I accepted. I said, okay, we have to change. 6 months later, I hated myself, I lost myself, I couldn't take it, and I went back to the Jordan Times, this time, where I started my career, but as a managing editor, which meant I had to build the team that I had under me, and whatever I was taught by everybody that influenced my life, I was giving to them. Unfortunately, I never had kids, but I think as parents, you all want to give the best that you have in your kids. So since then, every journalist I have tried to help, I've tried to help him in the capacity of him being my daughter or my son. I've passed on the best that I've had in me. At the Jordan Times, I tried very hard to set the record straight, to hold the power to account. I tried not to hide information. That is quite difficult. You have to remember that in my country, we are not allowed to talk, for example, about the king. We are not allowed to talk about the army. We are not allowed to talk about the police. Anything you say can be taken against you because the laws that are governing our job are just so flexible. They are done in that way in order to keep a sword on our neck. And the minute we do something that they don't like, they can then take action. So I remember we had riots in a very distant town, but that was like a very important town. And the government wanted us to follow their fabrication, and I refused. And I sent my reporter, and he came back with a very tough story. A boy had died from torture at the police station. We decided to break the news, but using the word torture in a government newspaper meant the end of my career. So I remember in the afternoon, I was sitting in my office, and my chairman called me, and he said, can you come here? I went there, yes. We've decided to sack you. I looked at him, I said, why? He said, the government doesn't want you anymore, and they don't think you are doing what you should be doing. You have to resign now. I said, I'm not resigning now, and I will come back to you when I've cleared my mind. I left. I went back home, and of course my husband told me, so many people started calling me. He told me, Rana, I don't want you now to talk about what happened to you. Clearly it's a case of cracking down on free speech, but if you talk too much, you're going to spoil my work. I'm dealing with all the people that you have upset, from the palace, the government, and the oligarchs of Jordan. I'm feeding 350 families, so you have to make a choice. Again, I had to zip it. And this created what I can tell you was like a big depression and disappointment in my life. I've slowly managed to get out of it because I'm a resilient person and nothing will stop me. But the best thing happened to me after that is when I was given the chance to form the first ever network for Arab investigative journalists. And boy, has this network opened my eyes. In the past 14 years, we started with working in 3 Arab countries, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, with a budget of $250,000 over 2 years. And today, we have a budget of $1.6 million, and we are operating in 18 countries, and I'm running a team of 22 people in my office, and we are working with around 500 journalists across the Middle East. This project is one of the most amazing gifts that God sent me. In this project, we are training journalists that really are graduating from mediocre schools of everything, whether it's journalism, it's economic, it's political. They have to be mediocre because otherwise the dictators would not continue to run us, because then we would be thinking more and questioning more. So in this institution, we are going against the chief editors, we are going against the governments, we are going against our own colleagues. We are training journalists how to do investigations, we are funding them, we are coaching them, we provide them a lawyer to review the product before it's put out. We have worked and collaborated with a lot of international media like BBC, Deutsche Welle, France 24, And a lot of the stories that we cannot tell locally are now being told through these platforms, which have amazing independence. So through this project, we have been able to impact our societies and citizens that are really a product of repressive regimes, that have no freedom to access information like you, that cannot express their views openly, and sometimes are not even allowed to think. So imagine what a life it is when you even have no right to speak, and if you cannot speak, you have no right to ask for anything else. This project also meant that I've come very close to unfortunate events, because in the last 7 years, the Arab world has become a quagmire of political instability. We have lost a reporter in Syria who was trying to document the new syllabus that was introduced by ISIS, and while he was taking photos with a hidden camera in one of the printing presses, he was caught, and ISIS basically took him for a week, and they debriefed him. And he told them that he's working with these 2 journalists based in Syria and us, ARIJ. And in 1 minute, we had to remove our 2 reporters, and on the day we removed them, one of them lost his mother and his sister in one of those barrel attacks that the Syrian regime is launching sometimes on areas. So it really, really ate us all. It was very, very difficult. In another story in Egypt, and today, of course, Egypt has become an unprecedented dictatorship. Under this current president, more journalists have been jailed than in the entirety of the rule of the president that was removed in 2011. And we are talking about 30 years versus 4 years. One of our colleagues decided to uncover the killings of policemen by their bosses, and we worked on this piece with the BBC. After it came out, the journalist was kicked from his job. ARIJ and the BBC were trending on social media in Egypt and called the enemies of the state and the agents of the Zionist imperialist America that are trying to undermine stability and security. This reporter today is with us in Amman, helping other journalists, passing on the knowledge that he has gained working at ARIJ and being indoctrinated by our very strict professional, ethical, and work ethos. In Jordan, we've had a big success with a reporter who used a hidden camera and went to a center that is looking after children with disabilities. We found out that their caregivers were chaining them to the radiators. They were sometimes beating them up, drugging them, sexually abusing them, and insulting them. And we worked on this for 2 years. We went in and out several times. In the end, today, some of these centers have been closed down. A committee has been formed, and today there is a CCTV camera in every center linked automatically to the ministry. So yes, we have produced 500 investigations. Every investigation was like giving birth to a kid. Every investigation has created change to the better, and this is the job of journalists. Journalists are there to collect data, to talk to people, to talk to sources, to corroborate what they have gathered, and to tell the audience what they have come to. But investigative journalists are really the kings of journalism. Why? Because they have to take bigger risks. They have to work out of their own initiative. They have to go to the sources. Sources will not come to them. They have to wake up every day and go to different places, work nonstop, really nonstop. They become obsessed with what they're doing. They are then able to write books, they can write columns, they can analyze the data. They are really top-notch professionals. But a lot of them go and take very big risks to be able to do what they do, and they do this out of a sense of justice, out of a sense of wanting to expose the wrongdoings of the system, wanting to basically hold the power to account. We are taxpayers, we are paying money, we expect to have better services, more social justice. So for me, it's been a very difficult life, but it's had many ups, some downs, and that's life. And I'm really happy that I'm a product of this Jordanian-German weird relationship. And I'm also happy that I've been able to work with a team of amazing journalists to make the Arab world, that is really a very difficult place, a bit better. And if I was born again, I would choose to be a journalist. Thank you very much for listening.